welcome to today's episode of the Landsberg Encounter. This is episode 8, if my memory serves correctly, and today we're going to talk about all things truth. And by truth I mean things that are related to photography and truth in the main, but we might stray into other areas depending on how the conversation goes. There's an old saying, goes something like, the truth is the truth, is the truth. The truth doesn't care what you think the truth is. The truth is the truth. And you can go around and tell people what you believe is the truth, or your version of the truth is, or what somebody else's version of the truth is, but realistically, the truth is the truth. And when you apply that to photography, I've heard people say the truth doesn't matter in photography because you're telling stories, which is true, I guess, to a certain extent. But I think it does apply particularly in certain types of photography, and we'll talk about that. But as a photographer, I think part of my passion for what I do, for people to believe in me, is that what they're seeing is a true representation of what I've done, or what I've seen, or what story I'm telling. So I think fundamental to the success of photography and photographers is their ability to tell the truth. And quite often it appears that the truth is a bit loose in photography. And we'll look at some examples and we'll see how that kind of comes through in the media particularly. But we'll look at a bit of other people's work. We'll talk about a few examples. We'll look again briefly at the history of photography and see how true or otherwise things are there. And then we'll look at some of my own work and I'll give some examples as to what the truth actually is, what the truth means, how loose we can be with the truth, and how much fibbing, shall we say, goes on in photography. How difficult it is to detect, how difficult it is sometimes to walk the line, to decide whether it's true or not, how much fabrication is allowed in all manner of different genres of photography. But I think truth is something in life which is kind of obscured a lot, particularly in the mainstream media. What inspired me to do this today about truth, it came off the back of last week. We were looking at some of my work from Rome, and I was discussing, if you've seen last week's episode on street photography, I was discussing a picture of I took of a guy in Rome who was collecting cardboard. I'm guessing he was homeless, and in the picture stood near a young girl who was just minding her own business, and I edited her out of the shot because I thought she was distracting, but did it alter the truth? And I was thinking about that over the weekend, and in that case, we'll talk about that later, but in that case I don't think it did, but I think in a lot of cases it does, particularly when the truth is really important to the narrative you're trying to tell. And so that got me thinking about other truths in photography, and I know from teaching photography for a good while and talking to other photographers about photography for a long time, there's a whole manner of fakery and the reasons for that. Some of it's moral, some of it's immoral. Some photographers don't think it even matters. So it just got me thinking about that whole thing about truth. And then this week we've had some awful events happen in Southport, and I was watching the media carefully as to how it was reported, and blatantly the narratives are just so obscured and outright lies. Mainstream media narratives, I mean, that the truth is, well, we live in a post-truth world is what it really comes down to. So I thought I'd discuss it a little bit about the truth in photography, or post-truth in photography, and we'll see where we get and see what you guys think. But really, I like the value that the truth is a truth is a truth. Doesn't matter what person A to Z says, the truth is the truth. It will always be the truth. It can't be changed. And I think the more of us that realise that and try to live by that, the better society would be. So let's start. I downloaded a few pictures yesterday, I think it was. It just took me back through a bit of my research when I was doing my stolen history research and looking at the history of photography and where it all originated and all that stuff. I'm not going to go that far back, but I'm going to bring it up to kind of where society thinks photography was. It's beginning to get prevalent, it's beginning to get known, people are beginning to use it, and that's kind of like mid-late 1800s. And one thing I discovered was around the turn of that century, 1900s, that people were really heavily into photographing the dead. Might seem a bit strange to us now, but there are a whole manner of Victorian photographers that specialised in photographing dead people, dead babies, dead kids, dead grandma, granddads, anybody. And part of the setup they used for that were things like stands. I'll show an example here, post-mortem technique, where it's claimed that they use a stand, a bit like something you might use to hold a mannequin up. So the dead person could be lifted, raised to be stood, could be seated, could be kneeling, could be leaning. And these contraptions are used to allow photographers to do that and to make dead people appear like they're alive. That led me down a few bizarre avenues, as you might imagine, and one of them was looking at a guy called General Lee, who you probably heard of. He was the leader of the Confederate Army in the American Civil War. And at first glance, you look at this picture and you think, well, it's just a bloke stood there. But when you look closer, if you zoom in, you can see clearly that there's a stand right behind him. So, like that stand that I just showed you there, there's one directly behind the general here. So this picture is purported to be him alive at some shindig. But my sentiment, my kind of like inquisitiveness made me think, well, how do we know he's alive? A little bit of makeup, a little bit of shine, stand him on the pose. Is he alive or dead? And that led me then to finding out further truths or untruths in that kind of era, mid-late 1800s, early 1900s, and as to whether anything you can see photographically is real. And I think some people think this was like they used it so people knew how to pose, which is just bullshit to me. Photography had been around, even if you believe the mainstream narrative about the history of photography. Photography around here for donkey's years, so they know how to stand and pose for a still photograph. So the fact that he might need a gadget to lean on while he had his photograph taken is rubbish, because even if, let's just say, for instance, let's say they were still doing a couple of minutes of exposure, which they weren't by this time, they're down to seconds and less, no stand is going to make a live person stand still for that amount of time. They're going to fidget. But here, Mr. Lee, the old general, is perfectly still. Slightly awkward looking pose, I think, as well. Is he on his tiptoes slightly? Is he not? Looks a bit straight. Looks a bit straight. Does he look dead in his eyes? Hard to tell, because a lot of generals, politicians, types are dead in the eyes anyway. I think there's every chance that in this picture is dead. And again, the powers that be are no strangers to changing narratives to suit narratives, are they? Changing truths to lies. So, just my thoughts there, that I think perhaps that gadget was in use, not just as a Victorian kind of bizarre way of commemorating people. I think it was probably more widely used to show people has been alive when they're actually dead. Here's another one. Post-mortem technique. Guy sat down this time in a chair with all sorts of contraptions holding him up. I'm not quite sure about this one. I mean, it's difficult. You can call a photograph post-mortem technique. This could be from a fun fair, anything for all we know. But again, you know, the technology of the gadgets were around for people to be propped up, held up, mocked up, and had photographs taken of them while they were dead, which is a bizarre concept to us, but I guess we photograph everything else. Don't we? We photograph births, we photograph weddings, we photograph, celebrate all other manner of things human-wise, but we don't celebrate death. And that's probably a topic for another day, but we kind of fear it, and so the idea of taking photographs of it is a bit macabre, but certainly it looks like they used to do it quite prominently 150 years or so ago. So I just found that very interesting, and from that, so in thinking about truth, I started to link it back to modern day truths, particularly within politics and stuff. But before that, I remembered another picture from my book, The Obfuscation of Photography, and I looked at Abraham Lincoln, and how for many years, for an eternity, people thought this picture of Lincoln was a photograph of Lincoln, and it turned out it wasn't a photograph of Lincoln at all. It was a photograph of some other mush with Lincoln's head pasted onto it. So again, why they did this why didn't they just take a picture of Lincoln? I don't know. Was Lincoln dead? Is that a wax head of Lincoln stuck on there? Who knows? But it comes back down to that. We can't trust photography ever to tell us the truth, even in a mainstream timeline of its relative new invention. Even straight off the bat, the line, things have been obscured, hidden, lied about, which, helps them paint their pictures, their narratives, their histories, but doesn't help us as observers being able to determine whether a photograph's good, useful, truthful, of its time, total fabrication or not. It's very difficult for us to be able to see. Well, we can't go that far back unless we borrow the old time machine from somebody. So we're kind of left picking at the bones of all sorts of narratives, which again, I've said this before, I think is part of the reason they do that. It's to make us unable to find actual truths, and we have to kind of surmise things through deduction and using your noggin. But it's just interesting that, generally, I'm going to say Einstein then, Lincoln, and probably others of that time just outright lied from a photography perspective. I'm sure they did with life and other perspectives as well, but they certainly did in photography terms, and it's just interesting to know that nothing's changed. We'll come on to that in a minute. But while I was looking at this, it reminded me of a picture of war photography. Now, I'm not talking about war photography like what you got in Korea, Vietnam, and the guys who photograph that stuff. I'm not talking about people like Don McCullen, the real, what I call the real photojournalists, the guys that did want to tell truths, and even Tim Etherington and people like that I believe they were true storytellers. But I'm thinking about people trying to make a name for themselves, people trying to make something that it isn't to get known or to be celebrated and lauded. And one of the ones I remembered, a photograph purported of cannonballs on a range, and it was by Roger Fenton. It was called The Valley of the Shadow of Death, 1855, and you can see the picture on screen now, and it's kind of like the remnants of a war. You're supposed to think there's a war been there because there's evidence from the cannonballs all strewn around, and when you look at it long enough, the cannonballs start to look like skulls. So it's that juxtaposition of men with their men died there. War's horrific, which I guess is a good sentiment to try and get over to people. But what this photograph doesn't tell you is that it was fake, and all these cannonballs that are in the picture were placed there by Fenton to get the drama. So there's another picture kicking about of the same time. Let me see if I can find it. Roger Fenton, Valley of the Shadow of Death. And off the top of my head, I can't remember whether it was discovered straight away that this was a fib or whether it was later discovered. I don't have the picture to hand because I haven't connected to the internet. Land strikes again. So, you know, he turned up. I'm not saying he wasn't at the war. I'm not saying there wasn't a war. I'm not saying there wasn't lots of death, but he was there. He photographed this valley, this road, not much on it. Didn't grab him. Knew it wouldn't grab others, so placed a load of cannonballs there himself, so he could then go and say, "Look what I photographed. Oh, it's grim, isn't it? Oh, it's terrible." Which is not the truth. It's post-truth, and you know that kind of what's the word? Fakery. That kind of shillery. Kind of really irks me as a photographer because if you're in a war-torn area, or you're seeing the aftermath of war, why do you need to fake anything? Why do you need to make it look like you've happened across it? Here we are, found it. So this is the original, apparently, and this is the stage one. So you can see here all the cannonballs up here to the right, and on the original there's nothing there. Now for me it looks a pretty grim picture as it is, so why you felt the need to cannonball it like that is a bit beyond me. But it just shows you the lengths that some people will go to make the drama, to over-egg their drama, to make their drama more dramatic. But it's not truthful, and it's a lie. And once you start looking at those kind of things and thinking about those things, going back to General Lee, going back to Lincoln, looking at Fenton's work here, how much of our photographic history is total fabrication? And total fabrication for me can come from one little thing moved to tell a different story to the story it would have told, right up to faking the moon landings, which is another thing altogether, which I won't get into now. But what led me down a path of looking at the fake moon landings were the photographs. So whether they faked the moon landings or not is open to interpretation. Most people can't think we didn't do that, we must have done it. But if you the best document I've ever read by far for proof of we didn't go to the moon is a piece of work called Wagging the Moon Doggy. If I just get that up, Wagging the Moon Doggy, which was a piece of work by a guy called Dave McGowan, who is sadly no longer with us. But for me, just quickly, looking at the majority of moon landing photographs that I've seen and studied, clearly were taken in a studio or somewhere with more than one light source, which led me to believe it must have been faked. There's the argument that maybe the kit was shit, maybe they literally couldn't take a photograph with it pinned to their chest and all that other stuff, so they had to stage them because what they had was useless. I could probably buy that. I could probably believe that. But when you read Wagging the Moon Doggy by David McGowan, and he explains technically, physically, chemically, really why they couldn't have gone, it kind of cements it for me. But that's a discussion for another day. But certainly from a photography standpoint, fakery has gone on and continues to go on, and it shows no sign of abating. And there are many other things that have come in between. Another one that I always think about, because I talk to students about it, is one from the end of the Second World War. It's called the Raising of the Flag at Iwo Jima, and it supposedly purports American soldiers raising the flag on the Japanese island Iwo Jima. It does show some American soldiers raising a flag on an island called Iwo Jima. But again, it's one of those stories where the narrative's changed over the years. I can remember when I first looked into this 15, 20 years ago, and the narrative on it then was, yes, it was staged after the event. It didn't happen spontaneously. They didn't arrive. The photographer wasn't there. It wasn't all, oh my God, look what's just happened. Let's take a picture. It was staged later. But in the intervening years, that narrative's changed now to now, oh, we did raise a flag initially, but it was a different picture. So now it's a two photographer thing. So the staff photographer that was with them took the other picture, which was raised first. That one there, you can see. If I just click on Wikipedia, you can see that was the first one that was raised. And then there is it Rosenthal that did? Yeah, Joe Rosenthal. That one there is the one that everybody knows, which was restaged later. But why the need for restaging it? Because if you've got this picture down here by the staff photographer Lewis R. Lowry, perfectly good picture. If that's true, if that happened spontaneously, why the need to recreate the other one? Now, this picture I'd not seen until I came back to research this a couple of days ago. So this has been inserted into the narrative in the last 20 years since I researched this initially. So that tells me that things happen to tell different stories, because there's nothing more powerful than the truth, and particularly truth in photography. So whether you believe that's the original picture, it just got discovered, or whether it's a narrative filler, or whether you believe that picture was recreated just to show the brilliance and the greatness of these people, doesn't really matter. It's a lie. It's a staged picture at the end of a war. It's not the picture of an end of a war. It's not a natural picture of a event that happened. It's a stage it's a restaging of an event that happened, sold as it happened. And it's interesting how things kind of creep out over the years, and things only start to matter years later, when people kind of get found out, or somebody decides that they're going to speak up because they've had 50 years of keeping it to themselves or whatever it is. But again, it's an enemy of the truth. It's telling mistruths, untruths, to make stories, to raise people up, to give people prominence when perhaps the truth would have been enough. So it really irks me that has gone on and continues to go on. And it just made me think of a recent event, and that was the purported attempted assassination of Donald Trump. So, Donald Trump. So, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, which is grim, but not a surprise to me considering the other assassinations that have happened and attempts that have tried to happen over the years. But, of course, straight away when it happened, people are already saying, oh, it's fake, it's set up, it's a false flag, inside job, all that other stuff. But let's just assume for now that somebody did try to shoot Donald Trump. He survived it, and he got nicked in the ear. And there are a couple of good photographers there. One of which is called Doug Mills, who took a photograph right at the moment where one of the bullets whizzed past DT. And if we look at this closely, they've circled what they believe is I'm guessing it's an air wave, an air passage where the bullet's gone past and caused disturbance in the air. And the camera's picked it up. And the piece I read goes through a whole range of reasons why it's entirely possible that at 1/8,000th of a second at f1.8 that streak could be caught. I'm a little bit more skeptical about that, because 1/8,000th of a second sounds fast until you've got a missile that's moving as fast as a speeding bullet, even a bullet that's already travelled 600 feet or whatever it was. So I'm a bit dubious. Now, I'm not saying that Doug Mills, who was a great photographer, has faked this, but narratives are fake. We've just seen how narratives are faked all the time. Faked to help narratives, to change people's thoughts and feelings. And if we look back at what we just looked at perhaps dead General Lee, the fake body and just the head of Abe Lincoln, the staging of the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima, would it surprise you if this was a fabrication, a fake, a dud? Wouldn't surprise me at all. I hope it isn't, because I always live in hope that photographers are going to be genuine and the people that represent photographers are going to be genuine. But I'm not really convinced one way or the other of that incident currently. But it's just interesting to note that even here we are, what are we, end of the World War to now 80 years, almost past Iwo Jima, and we still can't fully believe photographs that we see. There's a decent website here, photo.org.au, which lists a few known fakes from over the years. One that always made me laugh was the Cottingley Fairies. I can't remember if I downloaded those or not. But if you haven't heard of the Cottingley Fairies, there's a place in England called Cottingley, and with these sisters, Elsie and Frances, said they'd taken pictures of fairies in the garden. So we're talking shooting probably small or medium format film here. In fact, I read an article recently that said that the camera they used has been scanned and they could find nothing wrong with it. There were no pictures in there. But these guys went for years and years and years maintaining that story, to only then do that thing that people often do, tell the truth on the deathbed and said, oh, actually we faked it. Now if you look at them, any artist, photographer, technician worth the salt can tell they're cardboard cutouts. But people are easily swayed, people like stories, people like exciting narratives. So you can understand, I can't understand, but you can understand, I guess, why some people got taken in for that. How the photography world and the art world got tucked into that at all, I don't know, but perhaps they didn't, perhaps it was just the general public. But that led me just to look at a few other options, and like I said, this website's got a few options. This is one of Boyard's first known fake portraits. Shows a power of staging to convey a strong statement, and it goes on to tell you what it is, what it was. So I guess photo fakery has been around for as long as photography, thousands of years. But you know, it's context plays a big part in it. If you're faking a picture for a laugh, for a giggle, for a sideshow, to try and wind somebody up, fine, it's great, do it. I mean, modern cameras now, you can double exposing camera, do it, wind people up, great, do it. But when you're proposing truths, when you're telling stories, real stories, if you're a photojournalist, for example, or any kind of news teller, storyteller, you need to be telling the truth. And then if you're literally telling the truth, people can derive from that what they will. You'll never stop people adding their own truths on top of stuff. But it's important that your photograph is honest and truthful and is doing what you tell it to do. And that old adage of the camera never lies, well, no, the camera doesn't lie. The camera only photographs what you tell it to photograph. It's human beings that lie. So don't blame the camera, blame the human. But when we're looking at work, we need to think about context. What's the context for that picture? I often use this picture. There it is. So there's a picture of Prince William here. Oh, I'm not going to use that one because that's on the snow. We'll not use that one. We'll look at this one on Reddit. Oh, go away. No interest. I don't want to Reddit. Go. If we look at this picture here. So, context, isn't it? If you see the top picture and that's all you ever see, and you never see the bottom picture, you're going to think Prince William's giving the mid-digit. But when you see the same picture from the other angle, you can see clearly He's not doing that at all. And that's context. So if you're presenting the top one as in, if you're saying the top one is the only picture in existence, and you definitely gave the mid-digit, then you're misrepresenting the truth. So whenever you're taking photographs, are you representing the truth? Is it your truth or is it the truth? So the top picture is that photographer's truth. The bottom picture is the truth. And you have to look at photography that way. Your truth doesn't matter. The truth is the thing that matters. So when we're talking about photography, I'm going to give a few examples in my work now. Where does the kind of line get drawn, shall we say? So we have a think about that for a second. I mean, I've got a picture here of the fabulous Jess. Jess is a model I've worked with a few times over the last few years. Great model. I'm going to show you before and after edit, and then I'm going to discuss where the line goes from there. So this picture you can see now on screen is the picture straight off the camera. It's a high-res JPEG straight off the camera. No retouching being done to it as yet. So the context is, there's Jess leaning on a wall, showing us her figure, and she looks great. There's nothing wrong with that. So I then make an edit, and there's the edit. And if we flick between the two edits, you can see, first thing you can see really clearly is I've straightened the picture up. It's a little bit off center there, so I've straightened it up. Then I've added in some contrast, some brightness and shadow. You can see that. See the white walls compared to slightly grey walls there. Yeah. Then what else have I done? Can the trained eye see what I've done? Let's take a look at Jess's midriff there. You can see a little crease there, natural crease. She's not overweight, that's just an absolute natural crease. And she's got a little bit of a, where probably her trousers were rubbing on her belly when she was coming up. So if we then look at the edit, you can now see creases diminished. You can still see a little bit of the where her trousers were, but it's not so noticeable. And if we flip between the two, you can see that this picture no longer tells the truth. So there's the truthful picture. There's this slightly fibbing picture. Now in this context, does it matter? So let's think about context. What's happening with this picture? Well, we use this picture as a set as part of her portfolio, but we also featured it, I think, in Ascendance magazine. So we're saying, here's the lovely Jess, here she is, this is how she is, this is how she looks. Bang. Happy. Even though she actually looks like that, we're representing her to look like that, which is not much difference. I haven't taken any weight off her, I haven't slimmed her down at all. I've just removed that crease because that crease is a little bit, when you look at it, it's a bit unsightly, so I just took it out. I probably could have said to her on set there, oh, just move your hips to the left a little bit just to get rid of that crease, and it would have gone just the same. So if you look at a size, shape, everything else is just still the same. No, nothing's changed there. All right. So it's an almost true version, relative version of Jess that we purported. Yeah. I might have taken a little shadow off her face as well, but again, we're only talking minor details, shadows, a couple of minor blemishes and shadows. Yeah. It's pretty much how it was. So if somebody saw Jess in that picture and saw her in the street, they wouldn't think, my God, that's not the same girl, would they? But it's not the truth. It's a slight exaggeration of the truth. So straight away, even with a minimal retouch, not really done anything at all, I'm into lies. But quite often that's not where particularly the female editors and retouchers stop. Quite often what happens as well is, if my computer ever decides to wake up, what happens is they try to fit things to what they might call standards and norms, and that's where we get into a whole world of lies and mistruths and misrepresentations. What we're saying about Jess, oh, she's fabulous, doesn't need to be edited and retouched. I did that upon request from Jess. Just a light retouch, and is it going to recover all these buggers? Is it hell? And so that's what I did. You know, it's a request for it to be done, and the style, the lighting style, is my lighting style. What you would see normally in my studio, in my portraits, in my fashion work, in my beauty work. So that's not anything too different. It looks how I'd expect it to look, but it has been altered, and it isn't the real truth. It isn't the absolute truth. So there's Jess in Photoshop. So I'm going to make a copy of the background, and we're going to look at what the unscrupulous editors would do, and that is to say, they would, as great as Jess is, as lovely as she looks, as healthy as she is straight off the bat, there are some norms that she would have to conform to. And not every magazine editor and director are guilty of this, but the majority of them are. And you'll know what the standards are. And when you start getting into those territories, that's when the actual lies become dangerous. And by dangerous, I do mean that literally, because as you know, mental health issues are very prevalent, and not just because they're in the news, they actually are very prevalent. And many young girls in particular are kind of swayed by how their peers look, or how they think their peers look. And this is just a quick example. And the unrealistic, unhealthy version of Jess just suddenly appears. And that's a very, very light touch. We're talking a lot more than that on some retouches. But, you know, when we look at the original to my initial edit, and then to, let's say, a magazine edit, there are lies all along the way. I could issue that one. I mean, I could crop it, straighten it, brown it, and not touch anything on Jess, and she would look great. But society demands that we do a little something to make them more perfect, which is what happens here. And then the society again pushes it one bit further for editing for magazines, and you can see, you probably never see a female in your life that's got a curve that's that natural, because that's just not how bodies work. But that's the standard and norms that are expected, and I'm partly guilty for editing and over editing things over the years on clients' instructions, and only really occurred to me years after working in this part of the industry how much lies were told, how much fabrication was, and what the damage that did. So I try not to do that anymore. I try to err on the side of caution and certainly not making people look how they don't look. I mean, Jess there on that version looks exactly the same as she looks on that version. That one's just slightly more polished. You would still recognise her if she walked down the street. But if we go that one step further, we're starting to get into territory of, oh, you don't quite look how I thought you might look. You're not quite as slim as I thought you were. And that's where the danger occurs for me. It's probably all dangerous. It probably is all dangerous. And it's certainly all untruthful. So I just thought we'd have a look at a few more. I'm just going to look again at the one from Rome that I spoke about. The guy with the cardboard that I showed you all in my last episode. If I can find the lovely chap. Let's find the original. There's the original. Let's open him up in Photoshop so we can flick between the two. So here's the original of the guy collecting the cardboard. And I know I said I don't show pictures of people homeless, but what I meant by that is I not show them pictures of them laying homeless, sitting homeless, begging, asleep and all that. This guy was just collecting stuff, so that's why I'm happy to show him. And this is the original context. So we're behind the Pantheon, and there's tourists everywhere. and this girl just happened to be in shot. And bear in mind, I'm walking, he's walking, I'm shooting from the hip. I'm not stopping to compose. If I had done, I would have cut her out, but I didn't. So that's the truth. That's the truthful picture there. And then that's my edit. So truth, edit, truth, edit. Does the truth change? I'm not convinced it does in this instance, because she's just minding her own business. She's not part of the story. She's not contributing to the story. She's not adding to the story. If, I think I said this in the last video, if she was a multimillionaire or two parked in a Lamborghini, there's some juxtaposition. Why would I take her out? But just in this instance, she's a distraction. So I took her out, so she was no longer a distraction. And also reframing the edge of the picture tight to the guy, so we're just looking at him and we're thinking about him and his life. Has that moved the truth? I don't think it has. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think. If you think that shifted the truth, drop me a message, let me know, or leave a comment. In cropping out that person from that picture, has the truth of that picture changed? I don't think it has, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. One more picture we'll just look at. I did a bit of, what's it called? Product photography the other day. Is it even called product photography? Don't even know what it's called anymore. I'm so warm. It's called it's called packaging photography, I guess. So I'll show you a few different versions of this picture. It's something I do every now and again. It's something I don't do it because I love to do it. I do it because it pays bills and because it's good practice. But it's not something that I choose to do. I'm not sitting around going, oh my god, I really want to do some food photography today, or some still life photography. As you know, I like things that talk back to you, that excite you, that make you feel good. Alright, so these are the 3 different versions. So remember I said to you on the last video about setting your colour balance. Clearly I did, but clearly the lights lie. So this is the original. I've got a fork dangling off a overhead thing holding it, so it's got a bit of distance between the table to create that nice shadow there, to make it look elevated. And then I've got the pot itself elevated by some stuff underneath it just to lift it off, so again it looks elevated, so it looks like it's floating a little. And the premise there is slim fast, lose weight, be lighter, raise up. That's the premise. So that's the original. The first edit ends up as this. As you can see, it's a lot tidier. The whites are now white, shadows are nicely pronounced, and then the final version there. So original, first edit, the second edit, completed. Is it a lie? Original, end shot. Have I lied? The fork's still hanging there, the shadow's still there, that's still there. I didn't retouch anything on the pot. I tell a lie, I might have taken a few blemishes off from memory. There were a few little scratches, took them off. But have I lied? You can see the setup, so the fork's dangling. I haven't photoshopped it in. The shadows are still the shadows. Yeah, everything's as it was, or is it? I think most people would look at that and go, yeah, that's a pretty true representation. That's all the way down the line, despite your edit. But the truth is, there's a line there. And the lie is just a simple lie. If you look at the shadow on the lid, and look at the shadow on that lid, totally different. Yeah? Totally different shadows. That's because that lid is from a different picture. Because when I sat looking at that version, all I could see was that shadow, which is from that beam that was holding the fork up. So I had some shots without the fork, with just the pot. So I took one of those, copied it and pasted it into there to make it fit. So it's a lie. It's not a true representation of that because the lid's not the same lid. But who would know that? Will that stop somebody buying that Nourish pot? Would that make somebody go, God, these are liars, I'm not buying that? I don't think it would, because the context doesn't matter. All people want to do is look at that and go, oh, that looks nice, I'll buy it. Does that shot do that? I think it does. They're not looking at that and going, that bastard's changed that lid. Why has he changed that lid? I'm not doing it. I changed it for aesthetics, personal choice, because you could see the stupid shadow. But does it change the truth of the shot? It's a slim, fast, low fat Nourish pot, spicy Mexican bean chili. It still is there. It's just a better version of that shot. And although I've changed the lid, the lighting a little bit, and brought a bit more shadow in, still the same thing. I haven't done anything to it that would make it not true. Have I? Let me know what you think. So yeah, lies. All of it's lies. So truth in photography is important, but obviously it does. It depends on context, and the other thing we're dealing with these days is AI. And I saw an article the other day I was reading about AI portraits, and how AI portraits are now kind of that indistinguishable from real portraits of people. And it showed you whatever it was, Mid-Journey version 4 compared to Mid-Journey version whatever the hell they're on now. And there was a distinct improvement. You could see the improvement. You could still tell it was AI, but, well, I could. The untrained eye, I'm not so sure they would be able to tell. But more than that, it frustrates me that, again, this is a photography forum as well, we're dragging photographers away from photography. And we're going to end up, killing ourselves doing that financially. But the interesting thing is that the lie in photography has now become bigger than that. So whereas photographers used to have to take a picture or two, manipulate and put them together, do all that people have to do now is go into an app and prompt what they want, and they've got a picture. And how do we know that's the truth? Yes, some are clearly fake. It's going to get better and it's going to get worse. So the post-truth world we live in, from a photography standpoint, is going to become even more post-truth, because the post-truth photograph won't even be a photograph. It's likely to just be an AI configuration from a prompt. So we've got a lot of work to do as photographers, not just to save photography, but to save the truth in photography. How do we do that? How do we save photography from being reduced to mere pixels, which aren't truths? How in the hell do we do that? What can we do? What power do we possess? And I would argue the power is ours, and what we should do is quite simply create better work. Keep continuing to learn, continue to grow, continue to be that photographer you always wanted to be. Continue to push your desires, your wants, your loves, your excitement. Create photographs, show photographs, tell truthful photographs. If you have to manipulate, if you have to adjust, do it within the narrative, do it within the context. Don't stray outside of the context. Because context, as we've just seen, is everything. If you think about the picture of Prince William, it's a very, very stark, simple example. But if you're telling narrative stories, street photography, fashion photography, if you want people to believe your truth, because as a photographer, that's really all you've got. If you're producing work that you want people to know is yours, that this is my work, I've done it all. I did the prep, I did the learning, I did the lighting, I did the edit, I did the print, I did all that. Tell the bloody truth. Don't rely on people not being able to work out whether you've told the truth or not, because once people work out that you're a liar, you're done, you're dusted. There's no way you're going to get respected. And I know respect doesn't pay the bills, but for me, my photography is all about my integrity. And I've just shown you some examples of how I push the line. And I do requests from clients, and I bend the truth. But I try to do it within context. And yeah, every now and again I fall out of that context and I make a complete fuck of it. And I'm happy to hold my hands up and say I'm guilty of contributing to the world of probably of anorexia and bulimia, and for particularly young girls not feeling like they're good enough, they're not beautiful enough, they're not sexy enough, whatever it is. And guys, come to that. For a long time I was part of that problem from a retouching perspective, retouching to expectations and straying away from reality and truth. I'm guilty of that. You've seen now the example I showed you of Jess is about as far as I go now, and I don't think that would be anything that would push somebody to feel bad about themselves. It's within the bounds of reality still, I think. But I might be wrong. Let me know. Like I said, comment, email me, message me, whatever. If you disagree with me, great. The world should be full of disagreement. We can still be friends afterwards, trust me. So that's kind of my thoughts on the truth in photography, which like I said, came about just from me showing you guys in the last episode, me chopping that girl out of the guy's picture. And it made me think a little bit more about my pictures from Rome and about my truths, and just looking at street photography, because that's what it was and that's where I was when I did it. And just, you're looking for truth. I mean, that picture on screen now, it's just somebody's parked a bike there. Parked a bike, locked it up, gone to work, gone to shop, gone to whatever. There's a couple of people walking past. It's on a high street. Apart from pinch the exposure and make a black and white conversion, that's how it was. That's my truth of that picture. But that story I've just told you, I don't know that's the truth. For all I know, that person could have left that bike there 20 years ago because they were kidnapped, or left that bike there because they stole it off somebody and left it there. Who knows what the truth is? Well, that's my truth. Again, me looking up at buildings, that's how I see buildings. My truth. But the person stood 200 yards away looking directly at that building has a completely different truth altogether. This young lady's truth, I don't know what it is. My truth is, I just thought she looked like she was really thinking hard about something, so I swung the camera around, pointing at her. It's a little bit out of focus, there's some motion blur, but I just thought she looks like she's really thinking hard about something. For all I know, she might just be how she looks. So I don't know the truth. A busy street in Rome, that's a really steep hill. Doesn't look that steep on that picture. My truth is, having walked up it a dozen times, it really is steep. Don't think you necessarily see that on that picture, but there's a truth in there, because that was my truth. If we look at the ladies on the bottom right there, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what they're actually doing. I mean, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Just that. Are they getting on? Are they getting off? Are they arguing about it? What's the truth there? That's my version of whatever was going on. So it's quite interesting when you start looking at pictures and thinking about them from a truth aspect. That's another, version of the truth. Lady walking past smoking, slightly out of focus again, but it was a swing round moment. Bunch of people going about the holiday, walking past, telling their own stories to me. Again, that girl there having a conversation. Was she having a row? Was it a love story? I don't know. But that's my truth is bang, that. I haven't added anything in, I haven't taken anything out. These two guys sat eating ice cream. That's my version of the truth. I don't know who he was talking to. I don't know if they were together, whether they just happened to be on the same bench. But my truth is, that's the picture. I haven't taken them out of context. I haven't put them into context. I haven't photoshopped the hotel in. All that stuff was there in the shot. All of my street photos are truthful. Now, the most I might do is take a bit of crap off the floor, or remove something that's like an eyesore, an obstruction that makes somebody look at it instead of looking at the story. But I wouldn't want to change the narrative. I wouldn't want to. Even this one, for an example, I mean, these are only really snapshots of the Trevi Fountain, because unless you go at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody there, you ain't getting a good picture of the Trevi Fountain. But this picture here really annoys me, really annoys me, because there's a lovely bit of light falling right on the cherubs at the front. Can you see that on the waterfall bit here? Lovely, it's lit beautifully. but the lighting on the building itself and on those statues is dog shit. So that kind of bit of the picture there's great, but the rest of it's dog shit. But it was kind of all I could get. But again, what's the truth? There's the truth. There's a load of holidaymakers taking pictures of the Trevi Fountain. Nothing put in, nothing took out, just how it was. And you'll see now, look, these guys getting the selfies done by the mate, front of the Trevi Fountain. Nothing taken in, nothing taken out, as it was. Same for all these. What is everybody's truth in there? Who knows? Are they on the run? Are they holidaymakers? Have they been shipped in to make it look busy? Who knows? But that's my truth. Young lady having a picture took, thought it was quite funny. A couple of girls there. So you can see my street photography is just my truth. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. But I'm trying to put them over as being truthful and honest. And not taking things out, not putting things in, and not moving people around, not changing body shapes, not putting hair on somebody because you think it look better. None of that is true in my street photography. They're all, save for a bit of sharpening and a bit of exposure manipulation, they're as the shot. They really are as the shot. I mean, this picture alone, I've never even noticed this guy in the background before. This guy here, what's he doing? He looks really interesting, doesn't he? What's he doing? So, again, we're thinking about the truth. And if we think way back to where we started today, talking about photographs from 150, 170 years ago, with General Lee, and then the Victorians and their crazy to us, probably not so much to them, ideas about photographing the dead and propping people up, following that lineage straight through, and all the fake photographs, everything from Iwo Jima to the moon. Don't forget, if you get a chance to read Wagging the Moon Doggy, brilliant bit of text. If anything's going to convince you that the moon landings were fake, that will. Never mind the photos. But again, have a look at the photos and see what you think. One light in space, one light on the moon, multiple lights on the craft, on the people. Is moon rock really that reflective? Have they considered the inverse square law? I don't think so. But anyway, that's for another day. So the truth, as we've discovered in photography, is really everything. Everything for the storytelling, everything for your reputation. It's just everything. Have a look around. Spend the next couple of days seeing what truth you can find in photography. Have a look at the Donald Trump stuff, see what you think. See if you think any of that stuff is maybe not true. Have a look at all the narratives on TV, particularly on TV and mainstream media. See how the narratives are spun. See how the photographs are used to help their narratives. See how much fakery, trickery and untruth you can find in there. Because trust me, there's a lot of untruths in the mainstream media. So I hope that gave you a little bit of insight into how I try to approach photography from a truth perspective. Like I said, I'm honest. I've fucked up the truth a few times in my life. Apart from fashion, beauty and glamour photography, I've never misrepresented a photograph. I've never taken a photograph at a wedding, for example, and misrepresented it, or a street photography picture, or even a skyscape or a nightscape. I edit them in my style, but I don't put things in, take things out, add things to change narratives. It's just not something I do. But as we've seen, other photographers do that. So, as ever, thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of that. If you didn't, like I said from day one, I couldn't give a shit. But, you know, for those of you that might have got a bit or a bat out of that, great stuff. I'll be back next week with another interesting topic. No idea what it's going to be. It won't be product photography because I hate it. But anyway, whatever it is, it'll be interesting, hopefully. So I'll catch you on the flip side, guys. Have a great week. Enjoy the sun while it lasts. Take care.